welcome to the Sanctuary, a safe space to speak from the heart. I'm your host, Israel, and my guest today is super talented pyrographer, designer, studio founder, owner, super awesome human being, Mel Madiba. Thanks for coming to the Sanctuary today.
Thank you so much to the Sanctuary for having me.
Oh man, I don't even know where to start. So I'm on Instagram, right? And then I see like your post. Like in my head you're like, okay, wait, that's a soldering iron. What is this person going to do with a soldering iron? And then I saw the finished creation and my mind was blown. Like, how did he get into pyrography?
Okay, so I got into the pyrography similar to how you found me. So I didn't even see anybody do what I was doing, but
Oh.
I just saw the word pyrography on Facebook in 2013, which is a very long time ago now. So I was just like, what does that mean? And then I looked and I Googled and I see that, it's the art of drawing with a soldering iron or with fire and so on and so forth. So I was like, oh my gosh, because I already had an arts background, I knew how to draw. I was like, oh my gosh, let me try this out. And then I
Mm.
did. And I didn't watch any YouTube videos. I didn't, get any classes. I just figured it out for myself. And I think that's why my style is also very distinctive and unique.
Yeah, no, it's super unique. Like, I guess, what about that word pulled you? It's a pretty cool word, I'm gonna say, but like, what about it pulled you to go down this rabbit hole?
I don't know. I think, sometimes in life we just feel things and we go with it. And I think that's usually when the best results come out. But I mean, I already loved wood. I had studied interior design and I noticed that I liked a lot of wooden finishes. So I think the aspect of, incorporating art and interior design on a different level, I think was interesting to me and I wanted to explore that.
Mm. Let's go back a little bit then, because you mentioned that you've always done some drawing. How did you start drawing? Like, what led to that passion?
So just like many of us, when we were in preschool, we used to draw on our parents' walls and everything. We draw on paper. So my mother noticed that I really liked art, so she would just try and encourage me to draw on paper or to paint and
Mm.
so on. And as I was in primary school, I got into art classes. Um, I did art as a subject I did design as a subject in high school, and so I'm very grateful to have a black mother who was able to um, let me do my
Ye-
thing. So
yes, yes.
yeah.
You mentioned that your mother was like, "Hey, here's this thing, draw." And like, I'm African myself. The thing is usually, you have to be a doctor, engineer, one of all those things. So yeah, you were, I guess, led on this path you are on.
Yes, I mean, and it's very funny because as much as my mother was encouraging me to do these things, she still, as I was growing up, even I think maybe even last year or 2 years back, she was like, "When are you gonna get a real job?" It's just so yeah, she does. She still doesn't understand, but what can she do? What can she say?
Mm, mm, mm. Okay, so you did. Why did you decide to study architecture though?
So it was in 2012. Yeah. So it
Mm.
was interior design and not necessarily architecture.
Sorry,
Yes.
interior design. My bad. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. So that was straight after high school. I did interior design. Um, yeah, did interior design. I had a few hiccups financially with my mom. And then I started my own business, and then I eventually went back to school and
What was
finished.
the business you started?
So I did a something called Yappy Threads. My business partner at the time was a graphic designer student, and I was an interior design student. And we were just driving around, I wouldn't say it's a hood, but it's a busy town called Sunnyside in Pretoria. And we noticed that a lot of people were just throwing out their couches out in the street, and some of them were
Mm.
still very good condition. So we had the idea to come up with a brand that would signify us as people, but also refurbish, old stuff,
Oh.
and incorporate graphic design into the interior or furniture space. So, but I mean, we started small because we didn't have a lot. We did T-shirts, and we were out at markets and stuff. But yeah, so
You've
we moved
always had
on.
this yeah,
Yeah,
sorry. You've always had this entrepreneurial spirit. Where did it come from?
I don't know because my mom's not an entrepreneur. There aren't actually a lot of entrepreneurs in my family. Um,
Oh.
so it's not something that was very, that was taught to me. I just kind of decided, I mean, my mom would suggest it, but she wouldn't teach me how to do it
Mm.
properly, but it started very early. When I was in grade 5, I was making jewelry with beads. So I would
Wow.
make them, and somebody liked it, but I didn't really sell. Like, I didn't think that I was doing anything particular. I think I probably sold two or three, like, in total. But
Mm.
I think I've always been drawn to having like an entrepreneurial spirit. Yeah.
That is so cool. Right. So you finish interior design, and did you get into making art as a business right away, or did you do anything with your interior design degree?
No, I didn't do anything with my interior design degree. I just went straight to, monetizing whatever it was that at the time, because, it took a long time for me to take my art seriously. At first it was more of like a hobby, and I had a 9 to 5. I was a journalist, um, and news reporter. And then at the same time, I also had a different business where we made skincare and hair care. So, I was just always doing something. And it was only until 2019 when I won an art residency called the Blessing Gubeni Art Prize, when
Mm.
I realized, like, oh my gosh, I actually have something here. Nobody else in Africa is really doing this, or nobody female Africans are doing this. And so I thought that this could be an opportunity for me to actually take my art seriously and live off of my art. So
Mm.
yeah, only in 2019 when I won a prize did I realize that I can really monetize from this.
So, like, I mean, it never occurred to you, or you never had people suggest you should sell your work?
Of course they did, and even throughout the years when I was doing other things, I would still sell some art here and there, but it wasn't something that I thought like, I just thought it would be a side hustle or something. I didn't think that it would be my main source of income.
Mm.
Mm.
Wow. Wow, wow, wow. So let's talk about the art residency you won. How was that experience? Do you remember the piece that you created that got you that residency?
So applying for the residency, they just wanted to see previous works. And
Oh, okay.
so, yeah, so they wanted to see my work, and then I went in for an interview, and I went in with the interview with new work that I had been experimenting on paper. And basically they were like, ah, we wish you brought your other works because we don't really like this. So as much as I felt like after the interview, I was sure that I got it because it felt good. I felt positive and everything. So I remember getting into the car and telling my friends, I think I've got the residency, but we'll see.
Mm.
But yeah, I think I just felt like I knew that that was for me. And
Mm.
at the residency, that's how I started a new series called The 13th Letter Manifestation of Self, where I had a
Mm.
solo exhibition, um, and that was very fruitful for me. I think it was a good time for me to, explore myself and to explore different techniques. So I really had my own studio. Sometimes I was sleeping in the studio, because
Wow.
I also had a tight time to produce as many works as possible and still, you know, have the solo in time. So
How long was your residency for?
It was 3 months. Yes,
Wow.
3 months.
And how much work did you make in that time?
I made, I technically made 12. Well, it was
That's
supposed
just
to be,
insane.
it was supposed to be 13 because I wanted to have 13 pieces, but
Right.
we only had like ten pieces. Yeah.
That
So
is crazy. That is crazy. I mean, like, I can't even comprehend it. The amount of work that goes into making one of these pieces. And actually, talk about the pieces. You started this YouTube series called Becoming, and that was kind of the first time I'm like seeing you actually doing it, and it's so much work. I'm lazy, so let me just start with that. I'm lazy, so when I see someone putting that much, I'm like, why? Why so much work? Um, what do you love about putting that soldering iron on paper or wood? What about it you love?
I think I just really love the way it feels in my hands, and how I can focus on something. These days you can't watch Netflix without, eating, or you can't eat without watching something. You can't even be on the toilet without, some kind of extra stimulation. So I think
Yeah.
for me, it's a time for me to also just be meditative, um, and to actually focus on one thing at a time. And then the
Mm,
other thing would be just having music playing in the background or something like that. So I
mm,
think it's for me, it's a grounding experience. Depending on the material that I'm using, sometimes the smell is also good. It smells nice because I'm burning the wood. So I
mm.
also enjoy that. But for the most part, I think it's just very relaxing for me. For a lot of people, obviously, it would be stressful. But but for me, yeah, I just really enjoy it.
Man, okay, so walk me through the process. Like, do you kind of know what is going to be at the end before you even start at all, or you just create it and then change it
Yeah,
as you
so
go?
a lot of the time I have an idea of what it will look like, but I don't know exactly how it will look like. So like for instance, if I think about the piece I did last year, it was a huge piece, a commission piece of Optimus Prime. I
Oh
mean,
my gosh.
yes. So the piece of Optimus Prime, obviously, I was given a photographic reference, and I didn't even try to fake it. I just scanned the whole, like I projected it and I traced it first. But when I was done with the body of it, I didn't know if I was going to add color or not. So it was a very interesting experience, especially because I don't really use paint. So it was
Mm,
interesting to see like how the piece just got a life of its own at the same time. Even though I
mm.
had an idea of what it was going to look like, the process, it kind of changed things. The materials I had also changed things. So yeah, that's how that happened. So a lot
That's
of the
so
times
cool.
I have an idea, but
Mm.
it doesn't always quite come out exactly I imagined it. But sometimes it's better, sometimes it's worse.
I don't think it's worse because man, your work looks amazing. Okay, so let's talk about the process now. You have this idea. What happens from then on out?
So if it's an abstract idea, then I just start on it because there's nothing to look at. But if it's like a portrait or something, I do work better if I already have a photographic reference or some kind of reference, just to so that I get the proportions right and everything. And then I would sketch it out with a pencil, and
Mm.
then I would start with the soldering iron.
Gosh. And what's the biggest piece you've done so far? I think I saw the Optimus Prime is in one of the photos on your website, right? Like with a guy
Yes.
standing by it.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes, yes, yes.
love that one.
That's the biggest piece that I've actually ever done. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
it's
huge.
huge. How long did it take you to make that one?
That took me, I'd say the whole of December. It was
Whoa,
about a month
whoa,
project. Yeah. And then, I
whoa.
mean, but I think that, considering December is a very busy month, I did go away for Christmas and New Year. So I guess technically it was about 3 weeks, 3.5 weeks.
Mm,
Yeah, so three and a half weeks of like constant working. That's how long it took me to do that piece.
Ah, okay. So let's keep going on this journey. You get the residency, you do your exhibition, you think, okay, there's something here. Like, did you start monetizing right away? What were some struggles you faced?
So after the residency and the solo exhibition, I did sell. I sold half the collection at my exhibition,
Wow.
and then I still joined a few exhibitions and auctions. Not a lot happened, but then, literally it was just, then it was 2020, then it was the pandemic, right? So, I hadn't quite finished school yet, so I went back to school, but I was still trying a few things. So yeah, that's how it happened. But I got better at monetizing. I had more knowledge about the art industry, and I had more art friends as well. So it was just nicer to navigate around that.
One question though I try to ask most of my artist friends is like, how do you know how to price stuff, right? Because it's not like, I mean, sure, you can say the material is X rand, but how do you like price your time and your mental effort that goes into making this thing?
Mhm.
How did you conquer like deciding to price your stuff? And do you ever get those moments where you're like, maybe I shouldn't price that high or that low,
Yeah.
or I priced too low? Do you ever get such moments?
100%. I think it's only until last year, actually, late last year, where I was firm about my pricing. Because I always felt like I need to be a little bit affordable. But when I think about it, like a lot of the time in the beginning, I was working at a loss because,
Mm,
you know, yeah, I wasn't charging accurately for my decision, because the
mm,
wood is expensive. I use electricity with the soldering iron. Then there's my skill. There's nobody else in Africa that does what I do the way I do it.
mm,
I've also got like accolades. I've won a prize. So some of the time, like, I forgot some of those things. And I definitely underpriced myself a lot.
mm.
But those days are long gone. So yeah, you definitely have those moments where you feel like you
Mm,
are underpricing or overpricing. I used to think I was overpricing, but then, it helps. I think if you want to be an artist, to go visit a lot of galleries. So I was
mhm,
living in Pretoria, so I didn't really visit a lot. I mean, there are art galleries in Pretoria, but I didn't enjoy the process, as often or as much as I did coming all the way to Joburg, and that's why I moved here. So,
mm.
you get to see a lot of work, and then you see the price, and you're like, you know,
Do you ever get times where I'm not criticizing anyone's work, but like you walk into a gallery and you see the work and you see the price and you're like, for that?
yeah, yeah. I mean, it's natural. We do that. And I mean, I'm not even talking about like, for artists only. It's nothing personal to the artist, because
It's
we do that
true.
with sunglasses, with
It's
clothes, with
true.
with phones. So sometimes
Yeah.
it's like, hmm, that can't be right. That can't be right.
Yes. Yeah, but just seeing your process and the work you put into it, uh, as in whatever you're pricing just makes sense. Did you ever work with like start working with like brands, bigger brands in South Africa?
I haven't. I only just did my first work for a brand, and it's not even like just that brand. So there's going to be a calendar, that I'm part of. So there are 12 artists, or obviously one artist per month,
Per
and
month, yeah.
every artist gets a brand. So my brand was ABSA.
Oh.
Yeah. So
What
my
what what month is gonna be yours?
March. It's International
Nice.
Women's Month,
Nice, nice,
so
nice.
yes, yes, I'm always about the women. So, yes, so yeah, that was my first real brand. But then, I've worked with brands. Not really, but they were all much smaller. Just and it was not necessarily connected to my art. More as for me, like
Okay.
just a little bit of an influencer thing.
Yeah,
Um,
that's the next thing I'm gonna jump on. No, that's because like you have a huge community on Instagram,
you
Facebook.
know,
I'm serious. Like, see, so here's the thing, right? To me, it's about the engagement more than the
Mhm.
number of followers. I don't even, so like you've seen pages where people have tens of thousands of followers and they get, I don't know, 6 likes versus someone that has just a few thousand and they just put up one post and the likes and comments are
Mhm.
crazy, and that's what stands out to me. So it's the engagement you get. So it's like the community and the people you built around you are actually interested in this thing you're doing, and there's like interaction. So that's what stands out to me, not really the number of followers, if that makes sense.
Yes, 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 for sure.
So to me, you have a huge following because they're super engaged. How did you build that?
I don't know. So I've had issues with social media. I don't know. Maybe someone secretly hates me. And keeps reporting my page or something. But yeah, I haven't like I mean, I remember when Reels came out, I didn't have Reels. I it
Mm,
took months. It took me like probably 6 months. It took a very long time for me to get Reels.
mm,
My discover like I wasn't being discovered much, even though I was posting and I was engaged. So now I think that the algorithm is starting to like me again. I have Reels and all these things. But it was very difficult. I mean, and I think if I had, you know, if I had were to start over now, it would be extremely difficult, to get my
oh,
following because I think I've had this Instagram since Instagram came out.
mm,
But also it's not very easy to I think build a thing, especially if you don't necessarily have a niche. And I think that's
mm,
why I decided to split, to create Mel Madiba Studio and create its own thing so that
mm,
you can have a niche and still be able to collaborate with different brands on this account and have different brands on this account and monetize both or engage, reach a wider audience and cross populate, but
mm,
yeah, I think I haven't made it a goal to grow my stuff because then that means that you kind of lose the essence of you. Then you're just
right.
following, the algorithm or trying to do what you think people like or what Instagram likes.
Mm.
So it makes things a little bit difficult for you to stay true to your authentic self.
And that is something that really stands out to me about you. Like you don't fake it, like this is you. and,
Mhm.
and I love that you even take that to your YouTube when you're vlogging. It's like this is it, I'm doing this, and this
Yeah.
is what I'm doing. Like there was one where I think you went to Cape Town for your birthday, I think, and it was
Mhm.
so like we're going on the journey with you, and one of the things that stood out for me was just you chilling at Wimpy and like, oh, I'm here at Wimpy because I have to wait, but it's like so real. This is like me. This is Mel, and I really
Yeah.
love that vibe about you and your work. Which leads me to becoming. You mentioned, your artwork for APSA is going to be March International Month for Women. Women empowerment is something that also comes through in your work, and now with the Becoming series, why did you decide to do it, and how do you even decide to pick the people you make this their portraits for the Becoming series?
Okay, so I think I've always loved women. I was always more inclined to women growing up. I just liked them. I just felt like it was a safer space without even thinking about, the politics and the things that we read and we know about today. But
Mhm.
I always just liked drawing women better. I thought that they had better features. They're more interesting physically as well. So I'm often inspired by a lot of women throughout the space in real life and obviously like digitally and externally and like famous people and whatever.
Mhm.
So I think for me, my reason for creating Becoming was to give people their flowers while they're still alive. Don't just be like, this when the person passes away, I really like this person,
Mm,
etc. Or in the midst of like some kind of travesty or whatever. Um,
mm-hmm,
so I wanted to do that, and also to show like the range of different women that I actually consume, look up to, find that I'm inspired by. um yeah, and I think for me it was also interesting to kind of, because with the Becoming series I was trying to act like them. If they were YouTubers, I would also try to edit like them. So I think it was a very interesting experiment for me to see how my acting is, how if I can find things to make things more interesting, then it's like I'm creating content and I'm trying to create like an experience that shows that I really or truly understand the person that I'm drawing or becoming in that episode. So yeah, I think it was
mm,
just like a very interesting look at exalting other women, because a lot of the time people just they want to be the star, but like we all have people that influence us throughout the
mm,
day or throughout our lives. So it's good to acknowledge those people as well.
mm. And like for the people listening or watching the sanctuary now that don't have an idea what Becoming series is, could you give a little bit of a description about what the series is?
Okay, so Becoming series is a series of portraits of women that inspire me. I've done Erin on Demand, who's a YouTuber, Lydia Dinga, other people that I've already completed but haven't published yet, include Jackie Aina, Sibongile Kumalo, who's a jazz musician who passed away last year as well. Yeah, a lot of YouTubers and musicians and businesswomen. So yeah, and some friends, I suppose. So I think that's what that is, just a portrait of Bonang on a piece of paper done by pyrography, and then I just speaking about what it is that I like about her, and when I found her, how she inspires me, etc. So that's what Becoming series is.
Yeah, I really love the one about Erin on Demand. I really loved it. And like, how long does it take to make the piece itself?
So the pieces on paper are much quicker, but it's
Mm,
easier to make a mistake. So so yeah, I think with the ones on paper I could do in about 3 hours.
mm.
Yeah, maybe
Talking
four,
about
depending on, yeah.
okay, talking about mistakes, yeah. Um I mean, what you do, like we paint, you can kind of like paint over it. You can like use water or white or black or mix or whatever. But the piece you use for your work is you just have to commit, right? How do you handle if say you get out of line or there's something just happens or there's a loud noise and you scratch something? How do you handle mistakes when you're making your work?
How I handle mistakes, I try not to make them to begin with. But if they do happen, I have to scratch it out. But the problem with scratching it out is that because the surface is so smooth, you will see that
Mm.
it's been scratched out. So I either try
Oh.
to scratch it out and I don't know, like try to do something on top of that, or I
Mm.
try to burn over it and come up with something to hide that. But the best thing to do is just to not make mistakes at all.
Right. Something that just came to mind, and I'm not the most handy person, but with soldering iron, like I don't think you can change the heat. That it doesn't have heat settings. You just plug it and it just gets hot, and that's it. Like
Mm.
so, I guess I mean, you've done this for years now. Is there like a technique that you use, for the heating and making
Yeah.
sure it's the
So
right temperature and things like that?
yes, so for my technique is that if I'm doing like, and this is something that I had to learn throughout the like my journey.
Mm-hmm.
Um I used to just start anyway if I'm doing a portrait,
Mm.
and I usually did the face last. And I think that that was a mistake on my part, because if I make a mistake, then the whole piece is ruined because the face is not right, and that's the point of it.
Right.
So now I start with the face and then go on to everything else, because then it's easier to fix those mistakes. So that is
Oh.
my process now. But when it comes to the heating, I have to just plug it in. Obviously, if I immediately plug it in, then it starts getting hot, so it's not that hot yet. So I do stuff with the lighter areas, or like highlights on whatever it is that I'm doing. And then as it gets hotter, I move on to the hotter thing. Like, for instance, if I were to draw myself now, I would
Mm.
start with like my cheeks first, because it's the lightest, and then like maybe my eyebrows and whatever, like my chin. And then, because then once the thing is like super hot, then I can move on to like my hair, because it's the darkest and I can burn much easier. And
Oh,
so,
so the darker, the hotter, right? Like the darker
yes,
the piece. Okay. Hmm.
yes, the darker, yeah.
Wow. Oh man, it's always interesting talking to you because, like, the thing you know, it's cool, it's scary, it's interesting, and then you're creating like this thing, and it's mind blowing. Anyway, so let's talk about one thing that's been a thread that I've noticed is like um with the prize you won with your becoming series, there is this, we've talked about it, women like women driven side to what you do. You ever get any pushback from like people that consume your work that, oh man, you're all about, women empowerment or whatever?
Yes, so I have received that, like, but I think for the most part, people understand why I'm doing it, or I think nobody minds. I've definitely
Mm,
received pushback, but then it hasn't been that intense that I think I would make a note of it.
yeah.
Yeah, I think people understand that, as Black women, um we're not really out there in the art, and if they are in art or ancient art, then it's like, she's the nanny and so on. And Black
Mm,
art history has been eradicated. Like, for instance, Picasso was inspired by African artifacts, but we don't know which artifacts, really inspired him. So it's just like, we have
mm.
to document all these women, these Black women. That's what I believe. And I think I don't feel bad for not including, men in my work. I've
Man,
obviously done it.
it's
Yeah,
your
it's
work. It's your work. You can create
exactly.
whatever you want. It's your work. You can create whatever you want. Okay, so let's talk about your exhibitions. How do you prepare for it? Like, okay, I'm gonna do 6, 10, blah 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 pieces, but getting the pieces is one thing. What else do you have to do for the exhibition itself?
So usually I work with, like, for instance, for my first solo, I was with Blessing Group in the Art Prize, so they managed a lot of, the admin for me. But I obviously did it. They just did say, hey, you have to write an artist statement. Hey, you have to update your artist, blah blah blah. Write a little synopsis about each work.
Hmm.
And I would submit that to them. I would take pictures as well. So I think, yeah, so it's not always, I just try to make a body of work, and then hopefully I get invited to exhibitions, or I approach people for to be included in their exhibitions.
Hmm.
And then I see what is available, what has not been sold, and then they see if it works with their exhibition as well. But
Mm,
I think for a solo exhibition, that's where, it's all about you, and you have to really know exactly what you're doing,
mm,
and prepare for it in a lot of ways, like having a proper routine, actually completing the work. um, so yeah, I think that that's the toughest part, to actually get the work done, and to make sure that your idea or the synopsis of the work is actually very cohesive, and that people will understand what the work is about. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, that's very true. So do you have any exhibitions in the works planned coming up soon?
I've got something planned, but I won't say much about it. But
Mm,
hopefully the exhibition will come to life at least in August this year.
wow.
But I still, I think I need to get a few sponsors because I think I need a little bit of funding to execute this idea. And yeah, we'll see how things go.
Have you already started any work on the idea yet or
I mean, I've done research. I've
okay.
done intense research, extensive research, but that's it. I haven't. I mean, in my mind, I've thought about how I would do certain things or the which woman I would have part of it, which things would be abstract. I've thought about a rough number of artworks that I think I could create in that time.
Mhm.
So yeah, that's about it. That's all I've done
Wow.
in that regard.
That's I can't wait. I can't wait for August then. And then is there any particular reason why you are aiming for August?
I
Or
mean, August is Women's Month in South Africa as well, so it will definitely have. It will be centered around women and queer people this time as well.
Mm,
So members of the LGBT community. Um, yeah, that's those people are the people that I will be making work for and about.
why is that important to you?
I think it's good to uplift marginalized communities, um, communities that are misunderstood. And for me, I didn't know that I was queer. I don't, for a long time I was not identifying as such. But I think I understand why people would want to be with different people, and there's a lot of shame, especially from families or people that don't understand. So I think for me this year, well, last year really was, for me to try navigate that space. And I was actually going to a lot of queer parties, and it's a completely different environment and community. So I think it's always good to give back, whether you are part of the community or not. But if you
Mm.
acknowledge, what's going on, then it's I think that's important to do.
I asked that because I think it's a YouTube video of yours where there's this party and man, there's this guy in white. The guy was dancing his heart out. I was like, I was transfixed. So you're right. Queer parties are the best.
Yes, definitely, definitely the best. Yeah.
Oh man. Mel. So we've talked about kind of this journey and where you are now and plans you're having for the future. There might be someone watching there and they are making art or not or creating something. What is something you've learned over the years that you'd like to share with this person?
I think the most important thing to think about when you are creating or when you are a creator is to act when you're inspired. So when you are thinking about an idea, that's usually the best time to do something, even if you're just writing it down, even if you're just telling somebody about it, if you trust them, or start researching or reading about it. At that moment, that is the best time to delve deep into it.
Mm,
And yeah, that I think to act when inspired and to just try to be as consistent as possible. But also just giving yourself grace if you don't feel like it, you can't do anything. You're gonna mess things up. So
mhm.
yeah, like trying to keep yourself healthy, both mentally and physically, so that you can create and be the best version of yourself and create the best version of your work as well.
Mm.
Yeah.
Mel, it's great talking to you. I've learned so much, and I can't wait for this piece you are going to grade. And really, like, just to follow this amazing trajectory of your career is so inspiring. And I also want to say thank you so much for coming to the sanctuary today.
Thank you guys so much for having me, Israel. Like it's always great to have these conversations as well because you also think, oh my gosh, like I was also a listener and somebody inspired me, or to get to see other people and other creatives and be inspired by them. So it feels good for me to do that and to have that conversation, and also for me to be able to look back at my own life, because sometimes you just keep going and going and you forget like what you used to do and how you got there. So it's always good to have those reminders as well. So thank you for having me.